In this video about my CCNA studies, I'm going to walk through some basic configuration commands for a router. I plan to practice these daily till they become second nature. It helps when I'm using my flashcards to have practiced typing out the commands, because then I can see in my mind how they look and the results of the commands. So it seems to really reinforce, and I think it's good practice. It's not everything you're going to need to configure a router. It's just the commands I'm currently learning and I'm beginning to practice. So I do have notes, so if you hear the sound of paper moving in the background, please forgive that. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is I want to add a laptop. So we'll go to End Devices, and we'll choose a laptop, and we'll put it here. I want to choose a router, and we'll choose the 4331 router. And I'm going to add a switch as well, and we'll choose the 3650 switch for this. For the switch, this particular switch, you have to make sure you add a power supply so it'll turn on. So we'll add that. Go to the command line, you can see it's starting to power up. For the connections for the laptop, you could just do all these commands by double-clicking the router or single-clicking the router, going to the command line and typing in all the configurations here. But in the real world, you're not going to walk up to a router and click it. You're going to take a laptop. You'll likely take a console cable and connect it from RS-232 on the laptop to console on the router. So I'm just trying to make it as real world as possible. I'm going to use the laptop connected to the router to configure the router. Before getting into any of the configuration commands, I want to identify the common modes you'll see on screen. It's shown by the prompt. So when you're at the prompt for the router and you see the greater than symbol, it means you're in user exec mode or user mode. When you see the pound sign, you're in privilege exec mode or just privilege mode. When you see config plus pound sign, you're in global configuration mode. When you see config IF plus the pound sign, you're in interface configuration mode. And when you see config line pound sign, you're in console line configuration mode. Those are the only ones we're really going to hit on today. So you have user mode, privilege mode, have global configuration mode, interface configuration mode, and console line configuration mode. The different modes we're looking at. So let's go ahead and get started with some of the, well, first let's show how to move in and out of the various modes. So let's pull up the laptop. Let's go to desktop. Let's choose terminal. And the terminal here, this looks basically like PuTTY. If you're using Windows, you would use PuTTY. PuTTY allows you to either do a serial connection or SSH, etc., Telnet, to connect in real life. And then if you choose the serial option, you'll see that the speed is 9600, data bits is 8, parity is none, stop bits is 1 here. And the only thing that, oh yeah, it is right. It is the same. Flow control is none and flow control is none. When I first pulled up PuTTY, it showed X on, X off, and I just none to show the video. That. So from the laptop, we're going to hit OK. We're going to pull up, and if we're into the router, let's scroll down a bit. Yes, we are. The first thing you're going to see is, would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? Just choose no whenever you see that. And then you just press return to get started. So right off the bat, we are in user exec mode, as you can see there by the greater than sign. If we want to move into privilege exec mode, you simply type the command enable, or if you didn't want to type it all out, you could type part of it and hit the tab, and it'll fill it in for you. But it's just as easy to type the shorthand EN for enable, and that'll bring you into privileged exec mode. So enable brought you into privilege exec mode. If you want to drop out of privilege exec mode, the command is disable. That's simple. So we'll go back into privilege exec mode so we can move into the next mode, which is going to be global configuration mode. And the command for global to get into the global configuration mode is configure terminal. Okay, again, you could just type out part of it, hit your tab, type out part of it, hit your tab. I find it quicker just to use CompT as shorthand for configure terminal. And that'll bring you into the global configuration mode by the prompt. Then to exit out of the global configuration mode, you can simply type here, and you just type end out. You're back to privilege mode. Next up, we're going to move into the interface configuration mode. So let's get back into global configuration mode by typing CompT. And to go into an interface configuration, you're going to choose one of the interfaces. So in this case, we'll look at the router. What we have available is we'll do gigabit Ethernet 000. Choose that one. And let me pull that back up. Laptop. So let's go ahead and type in the command to enter the interface configuration mode is you type in interface, or you could hit part of it and hit the tab button, and then gigabit, and I'm going to just hit the tab again for gigabit Ethernet, and we know we're going to work on interface 000. So now we are in the interface configuration mode. To leave the interface configuration mode, you just type exit, and that'll bring you back to global configuration mode. So next I want to go into the console line configuration mode. And to do that, make sure you're in global configuration mode here. I think it works from just privilege mode. And the command to get into console line configuration mode is going to be line console 0. Now we're in here in the console line configuration mode. You have a couple options here. You can either type exit, and it'll bring you back to global configuration mode. And I'm just going to use my up arrow to bring back the earlier command to go back into console line configuration mode. So you can type exit, and it'll take you back to global configuration mode. Or if you type end, it'll bring you all the way back down to privilege mode. There. Do that. All right, that's the end of the getting in and out of each of the various modes that I wanted to show. So let's get to some of the basic commands. The first command I want to issue is show version. Okay, and this is going to tell us information about the device. So let me open this up a little bit. Scroll up here, and here's the command, show version. And it'll give us information about the software that's being run. And if we scroll down to the more, when you see more, you can either hit enter to go line by line, or you can hit the space bar and it'll go down one screen at a time. And when we do that, then we see the hardware information. So it's a Cisco ISR 4331 that we're working with. And again, to see all that, we use the show version command. Next, let's look at the startup configuration. The command to see that is show, and then startup config. Okay. In this case, there is no startup configuration present, so it just tells us that you don't have one yet. So there's nothing there to look at. Now, if there was something there and you wanted to erase it, get rid of it by typing erase, startup config. And it'll warn you, hey, this is going to remove all your files. Is that okay? You just hit yes, go from there. In this case, erase because we didn't even have one set up. So after the startup configuration, let's go to, let's look at the running configuration. So there will be something there. So show running config is the command. And show running config, hit enter. And it's going to give us some, there's not going to be a whole lot, but it will give us some information. So here's our command, show running config. Shows you the current configuration size. The host name is just router. And there's not going to be a whole lot more because we haven't set it up yet. Well, so there's no IPv6 set. Let's hit the tab or the space bar. The first interface, there's no IP address. Shut down. There's really not a whole lot going on. So we'll go ahead and we'll exit out of that. Let's look at so that was the show, that command was show running big, I believe. Oop, show running. There we go. Okay, and you can hit quit at any time just to exit out. Let's go to the global configuration mode again. So conf T, and we're in global configuration mode. And the next command is super handy if you make a mistake while you're typing, which I still do. You'll get better, but it happens even after you've been doing it forever, I'm sure. So the command that we're going to use, well, the command that is enabled by default is called IP Domain Lookup. And it is set by default, so we want to change that. And the reason is if you mistype a command at the prompt, resulting in something that's not recognized, the router's going to try to look up that word, that mistyped text, as if it were a domain name. And it takes a very long time. So here, I'll show you an example. Let's close that for a second. And let's throw up, put another router up there, another 4331. Pull it up, go to command line. It's coming up. You can hit this button to jump forward 30 seconds in time, which is actually really handy because wait on it. So would you like to enter initial configuration dialog? Always just no, enter. Let's get into type enable to go into privilege exec mode. And I'm going to show you an example of what happens if you mistype a command and the IP domain lookup command is enabled. So one thing that's cool is you can type a question mark after a number of characters to see what commands are available that meet that. So, for example, show is a command, or you can always just hit the question mark and it'll show you all the commands available when you're at that mode. So right now in the privilege mode, we have all these commands available to us. So I'm going to hit Q and jump out of there. So to show you what happens is, so say I wanted to type the valid command show, but I accidentally put an extra W in there. And if I hit enter, instead of just giving us an error message, it's going to try to look it up. It thinks that it's supposed to look it up a domain name. And you'll sit here for a minute or two waiting. So we don't want that. We're going to get rid of it. We're going to disable that command. So let me go ahead and keep this router back to our laptop. Pull that up. We're going to go back into terminal, connect again. Pull down. Okay, and we are in the global configuration mode. Here we want to type, so IP domain lookup is the command that causes it to try to look things up as if they were a domain name. So what we want to do is just use the no command, turn that off. So no IP domain lookup. And now it's going to be off. So if I jump back, show you, so again, the example I used before was show, and I added an extra W, and then it tried to resolve that name. Now when you do it, it just gives you a quick error message, unknown, which is much faster. You won't sit there waiting for it. All right, next let's configure the host name. So if we look at the router, and here you'll see the display name is router 0. See here, router 0. And the host name is router. And the host name you'll see terminal right here. So if we wanted to change that for whatever reason, so for example, if I wanted to change it to R1, the command is host name, and then whatever you want to name it, R1. See it change R1. And we open up the router's configuration, R1. So again, that's not the display name you see in your workspace, but it's the host name you see while you're at the terminal or in the command line. So again, the command is host name, change it. I'll just get right back to router and then back to router. All right. So now when we first log in, let's go back. I'm going to exit out of everything. Over a little bit. Exit. When we first logged in via the terminal, and got to the user mode, user exec mode, you notice there's no password set. So let's set a password to protect that. And to do that, we need to first go into privilege mode, and then we want to go into global configuration mode by typing conft. And we need to get into the console line configuration mode here. And to do that, you type line console. I'll use tab to fill it out, 0. And now we're in the config line hashtag, and that means we're in the console line configuration mode. To set up a password, just type in the command login. It'll tell you login is disabled on line 0 until password is set. So we want to set a password, and the command is just password, and then whatever you want your password to be. So we'll use Cisco as the password. And now it's set. And let's go back and look. See that we'll exit out everything. When we first come in, when we first connect to the router, it'll ask for a password. It'll bring you right into user mode. You have to enter a password now, which is good. Cisco was our password. We're in. Now what we want to do is currently when we go into, we can jump right into user exec mode. We can change that so that not only do we have a password required in user mode, typed it, to get into privileged mode, we want to add a password as well. And to do that, the command is enable password. That's the command, and then whatever you want your password to be. So we'll make this one Cisco 1. Cisco 1. So the command is enable password, and then whatever you want your password to be. So we'll use Cisco 1, hit enter. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. You need to be in the global configuration mode. So we got to go enable to get the privilege, and then conft, and now we're in global configuration mode. So and then again, the command is enable password, and whatever you want your password to be. So I'm going to choose Cisco 1. There we go. Set. All right, and if we look at the running configuration, let's go ahead and drop down and type show running config. You'll see that the password is there. Enable password, Cisco 1. Okay, that's good, but that's not necessarily good that you can see the password. So let's hit Q just to drop on out. We don't want the password to be in clear text in case you're working on it and somebody's standing behind you. You don't want them to see that. So we can encrypt this password by using the, let me check here, the service password encryption command. So we need to get back into global configuration mode, so conft, and we're going to type service password encryption. Use a tab to fill that out. Now it's encrypted, so it won't be in clear text anymore. So let's go back and look at that. And when we do the, I'm just going to use the up arrow, show running config command. Here's enable password, but it's no longer in clear text. So that's a good step in hiding it so people can't just walk by and see your password. Now, the problem with the enable password command is it's really easy to reverse the type 7 hash that is used here, and I'll show you. So let's grab that hash, that's copy, and you can go to a site like Packet Life, and they have a Cisco type 7 reverser. You just paste the hash in here, hit reverse, and you see our password, Cisco 1, right there. That's all it took. So that's obviously not very good. Let's get back into our laptop. I'm going to Q just to jump out of this screen. And we want to set up a better method by configuring what's called an MD5 encrypted password. And to enable that, we need to get back into at conft to get into global configuration mode. And then we're going to enable, use the command enable secret. So enable secret. And we'll use the password, whatever you want, but I'll use Cisco 2 in this case. So now when we drop back down, we look, and we use show running config, my up arrow, you'll see that the original password that was easily cracked by the website is there, but now we have the new MD5 password, which is much better, much more secure. All right, let's jump out of there by hitting Q. And the next command is going to tell the system to display messages only after you press return. So I've not been able to see this in Packet Tracer yet, but apparently if you're typing a command and it's an error in some cases, the system will throw up the error message mid-type, and you don't want that. It interrupts you, which can be annoying. So to do this, we need to get into the console line configuration mode. And so let's start by typing conf T to get into global configuration. And then we're going to do line con for short. You can hit tab. We're going to go 0. Okay. So now we're in the console line configuration mode. And the command that we want to enter so it doesn't interrupt our typing is logging sync. Oop. Logging sync. There we go. And if we exit to go back, change pages here. Now we'll be able to do the, well, actually I have no way to show that because again, I don't know how to get that to trigger in Packet Tracer. So let's move to the next command. We'll drop back down a level and let's do the show IP interface brief. Well, the whole command interface brief, but you can just use show IP interface brief if you like. Usually use that. And this will show us the interfaces that are available and a little bit of information. So this is the router. We're going to work on gigabit Ethernet 000. Right now you can see that there is no IP address assigned and the status is administratively down. So you put a switch up, the interfaces are going to be live by default. When you put a router up, the interfaces are down by default, and that's a security measure. You actually have to bring those up. So we'll do things here in a second like assigning an IP address, and we'll bring those up. So let's get started with assigning an IP address. So we need to return to conf T to get into global configuration mode, and we want to move into interface configuration mode, and you do that by typing interface. I'm going to type INT and hit the tab. And then name, gigabit Ethernet, and we're going to work on 000. So now we're in the interface configuration mode, which you can see here. To assign an IP address, the command is just IP address. So IP address, and then whatever you want to give it. So we'll call this one 10.10.10.1 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. Hit enter. That's done. While we're here, let's go ahead and add a description to that interface. And it'll come in handy. I'll show you in a second. So let's go ahead and add the description, the command, while you're in the interface configuration mode, which is right here. The command to add a description is description. And then whatever you want it to be. So I'm going to use a couple of hashtags just so it stands out when we look at it in a minute. And I'll type this connects to switch 1. A couple more hashtags just so it stands out when we look at it later. So we have the IP address set and we have a description set. And let's confirm that. So let's type end. And we're going to do the command show interfaces tab, hit enter. And when we scroll up here a little bit, here's the command show interfaces. We have our description that we typed, and it's right here. This connects to switch 1. And we also have the IP address that we set, 10.10.10.1/24. That's in CIDR, CIDR. And 24, we know that's right because we did a 255.255.255.0. So we've confirmed those. Let's hit Q to exit out. Now we want to, we've got the IP assigned, we've got the description assigned, and we've confirmed that. So if you like I talked about before, the router's interface is going to be down by default. So I'm going to add a connection quickly. I'm going to do a straight through because it's a switch to a router. 0, 0 to 101. And we'll jump forward in time. You can see nothing's happening. It's down. And that's the security measure that's there by default. So let's go back to our laptop and let's bring that interface up. So we need to get into global configuration. So Comp T, and we're going to type in the interface we're working with. So I'll just do that and hit tab, and then gig and tab, and we're going to work on 000. There we go. The command now to bring that live is no shutdown. So if you wanted to take it down, you would just put shutdown. But in our case, we want to bring it live, so we're going to do no shutdown. And once you click that, if you look over here, you see this turned green. That means it's live, it's up. This is still orange, I think, because the switch is running spanning tree and it takes a little bit to work through that. So we'll go forward 30 seconds in time and you can see now it's green. So this is all active for us. So we brought the interface up. So we got the IP address, we got the description, we brought the interface up. Let's move on to our next page of notes. Let's set up the Telnet. So to set up Telnet for the router, we need to look for what VTY lines are available, and that stands for virtual terminal lines. And those are used to control the inbound Telnet connection. They're not like physical lines, they're just virtual, it's software, but we need to look those up. So let's drop down and we're going to look for, we want to do the show running config again. Show running config, I'll hit tab. We're going to hit the space bar maybe three times, and there it is, what we're looking for. So those are our virtual terminal lines, VTY, and there are lines 0 through 4. So there are 5 lines actually that we're going to configure. So I'm going to hit Q, drop out of there. And let's get into, we need to move into line configuration mode. So Conf T to go into global configuration mode. And then we're going to choose line, VTY, and we're going to work on all of them at once. So 0 through 4, we're going to do all 5, hit enter. And to set a password for Telnet, first you tell it login, use the command login. It'll tell you, hey, login is disabled until password is set. So let's do that. You set the password by just typing password and then whatever you want your password to be. So I'll use T Cisco as the password. That'll be our Telnet password. And we can drop down and confirm that it's there. So show running, hit the up arrow a couple of times for running config, hit the tab a couple of times, spacebar a couple of times, and one more. And there we go. So virtual terminal lines 0 through 4 are set with this password. Okay, so we'll hit enter again, or actually we'll hit Q just to drop out. Now let's do the, let's actually test the Telnet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this for a second, and I'm going to drop this connection switch. Oops, try this. And I'm going to run a crossover cable from the laptop past Ethernet 0 to the router, and the interface we're working on is 000. And before I set up Telnet, we're going to have to give the laptop an IP address so the router knows where to respond. So go into the laptop, click the configure, choose fast Ethernet 0, and we'll give this an IP of 10.10.10.2, and we'll create a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. Okay, so now that's set up. We should be able to then, we're still on the laptop. We'll go to desktop, we'll go to command prompt this time. And if everything's right, I should be able to just type in Telnet and then the IP address of where I'm going, which is the router. So Telnet 10.10.10.1, hit enter, and we're in, it's open. It's asking for the password that we set previously. So that was Cisco. Hit enter, and we're in the router via Telnet. So that's pretty cool. To exit out, to drop out of the router, you just type exit, and you can see connection to 10.10.10.1 closed by foreign host. So we have the Telnet up and running. We know that's working. So let's go to our command line, which we're in here in the laptop, and let's look at our ARP table, or address resolution protocol. It maps IP addresses to MAC addresses. And to see that in a laptop, I believe it's ARP-A. And there we go. So the laptop has learned that IP address 10.10.10.1 is mapped to this MAC address. You see it ends in BA01. We can confirm that by clicking on the router, and we can go down to, we can go up to the settings, nope, gigabit Ethernet, and there you go. There's the MAC address, BA01. Close that, back to the laptop, in there. So it's learned that. Now if we want to look at that on the router, see what it's learned, we'll go to the command line for the router. Actually, we should put back through here, terminal, connect, okay, in the router. And if you're in a router, the command, instead of just ARP-A, you have to do show ARP. And we'll see here that, up so you can see it a little better. So the router knows about interface 10.10.10.1 is this MAC address, and it's gigabit Ethernet 000, but it's also learned about the laptop, which is 10.10.2, and that's its MAC address. So the ARP table, again, address resolution protocol, maps IP addresses to MAC addresses. Let's go ahead and finish out by saving the work that we've done today. So we go into, we're in privilege mode, so we can just type copy running config to startup config, and it'll ask you the destination file name startup config. Just hit enter, and it's done. Now, when we first started, we did the show startup config, and there was nothing there. But now, when we do the show startup config, see something. There it is. Okay, there's our command, show startup config. We created the host name of router for it. Here are the passwords that we set. Didn't do anything with IPv6. That's for another video, but we can see here that, let me go down a line. So the description of the gigabit Ethernet that we set was this connects to switch 1. See that? See the IP address and the subnet mask that we addressed. It no longer says no shutdown here, which tells us it's active, because if you look at interface 002, you can see where it says shut down. But on 0000, gone, so it's up, it's active. And that's about it for today. That's the video. Those are the commands that I'm currently studying and practicing each day. As I go through the new videos in the book, I'll add commands, and in the future I'll make another video with more commands for the router and what they do. And for those who are studying for the CCNA, I highly recommend that you do what I'm doing as far as either making videos or writing blog posts. And I'm not doing this, I don't really care if anyone ever sees this. The point is, I need to take the time to try to teach what I'm learning, because it really does make it stick in your mind. And I found that it forces me to go look things up that I don't completely understand. So like VTY, at first I kind of had a rough idea what that was, but I didn't know they were called virtual terminal lines. So it's really helpful if you find some way to teach what you're learning. You can do it through a video, you can do it through a blog post, you can sit down with someone you know and explain to them these things, or have them sit next to you and just talk out loud as you go through each of the steps of configuring your router. So I hope this was helpful. Look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.